Despite all the highs life as an athlete brings, the buzz of competition day, the unleashing of emotion at a last-second game winner, and a sense of fulfillment that comes from true mastery of something, there is one low that can get so strong that it drowns out all that good. Loneliness. The higher you climb in sport, the lonelier it gets. And for many athletes, this has devastating consequences for their career, and in some cases, their lives. So look, today's video is a bit more serious, but let's have an honest chat about loneliness in sport and give you some advice on how to better cope with this reality as an athlete. To understand loneliness in sport, you have to look at what makes this life path so different from others. Firstly, the demands of your training and competition schedule mean sacrificing time with family, friends, and other relationships. And not everyone gets why you have to say no to a night out or why you can't make a family event. They might support you at the start, but as the months or even years roll on, this support can fade, where it gets to the point that you don't even get invited to things anymore and you start to feel isolated. Then there's also the gap that forms between you and those who don't share your dedication. They may care about you, but they don't quite understand the grit and pain that you put in daily. They say things like, it's just a game, when you're going through a rough patch, and don't understand that to you, it's your actual life. Your sport is likely the thing that you spent most of your life's waking hours on. You've had thousands of training sessions, competed in hundreds of competitions and games, or spent so many days of your life traveling on buses, in cars, and even on planes to compete. Your whole life has revolved around this one activity. But other people don't see this, and because of this, they don't quite understand why you work so hard and why you then feel like that they don't get it. And this gap in understanding isn't intentional, but you're on a journey that is so detached from their worldview, and you just end up feeling misunderstood. And finally, the sacrifices you make aren't just physical, they're emotional too. Many athletes don't have someone that they can confide in, who they can truly open up to. Even teammates, as much as they're like family in some cases, they're also rivals, competing for the same spots as you, the same recognition, and the same can sometimes be said with coaches. A lot of athletes don't want to open up to their coaches. They think it's a sign of weakness, and that they fear that their coach may lose trust in them and question whether they really have what it takes. And this means that even with people around, it can feel like you're going through it completely alone. All of this makes life as an athlete incredibly isolating, and you're left trapped in a cycle of overthinking whenever you face the tough moments in sport, like injury, a poor run of form, or when a contract is running down and you don't know where you're going to be playing next season. And look, loneliness doesn't just impact your social life, it can massively impact your performance. When you're feeling lonely, it's easy to spiral into self-doubt. You're putting in the work, but without support, every failure feels more personal. Those days where you have an absolute stinker in practice just weigh you down twice as much when you're feeling lonely. And it's so much harder to bounce back when you don't feel like you have anyone truly rooting for you. If all you're doing is training or practicing and then going home to an empty apartment or bedroom because you're too tired to socialize, then you get trapped in a suffocating cycle. Each practice becomes worse. You feel worse about yourself, and then you've got no one in your corner to cheer you up or just help take your mind off things for a few hours. And of course, this isolation then impacts your motivation too. When you don't have a solid support system, the mental grind becomes twice as hard. And instead of feeling charged up and ready to tackle your goals, you start questioning whether it's all worth it. You replay every bad training session over and over in your head because you have no one there to help you process it and move on. Over time, this loneliness can lead to burnout. You've given up so much to pursue this goal, but the emotional cost starts to weigh heavily. Loneliness can make you feel that all the sacrifices might not actually be worth it. And for some athletes, this can even lead them to completely walk away from the sport that they once loved. So let's talk about what you can do about it. Coping with loneliness isn't easy, don't get me wrong, but there are strategies that can help you manage it and keep you going strong, even in the toughest moments. Firstly, find a mentor or individual coach who believes in your potential and understands the athlete lifestyle. This doesn't even have to be someone in your particular sport, but they need to understand the sacrifices that you're making and the grind that you're going through. A mentor can provide guidance, share their own struggles, and even be a sounding board for your goals, doubts, and even your victories. They've walked the path themselves, so they know the ups and downs intimately. Having someone who can remind you of why you started and just help you keep perspective through those hard times can make such a massive difference. Next, connect with athletes who share your commitment level, whether online or in person. Training groups and online communities are filled with athletes who are on a similar journey, and they can be powerful allies when you're feeling isolated. It might surprise you how open and supportive they can be, even if you've never met them in person. There are a lot of others out there who will be going through similar struggles with loneliness or sacrifice, so having a group where you can actually share your experiences, your setbacks, and even just day-to-day frustrations can make you feel part of something bigger than yourself. And these connections remind you that while your own individual path is unique, you are not alone in your dedication and your drive. And also don't neglect your life outside of sports. Yes, you are driven and committed, but it is super important to keep connections that remind you of who you are beyond being an athlete. Because being an athlete is for sure a huge part of being your identity. Let's not lie here, but it's not the only thing that defines you. There are so many other aspects of who you are, and it is very important to be able to detach from the athlete side of you every single day. And it's often the case that friends who aren't wrapped up in the competitive world can actually help you see yourself as a whole person. The very best friends you have will support you unconditionally, not because of your achievements, but because of who you are deep down. These relationships give you perspective, so when things get rough in training or in competition, you have a safe space to just recharge and remember that you're more than just your athletic performance. And then lastly, build rituals that give you something to look forward to each week. These don't have to be big. Small, consistent rituals that bring you joy and peace can go a long way in helping you feel grounded. It might be a weekly phone call with a family member, meeting up with friends for a coffee, or just jumping online to play some video games with them for a few hours. These little moments can serve as reminders that while, yes, your sport is incredibly important to you, there's a whole world out there that you can savor and appreciate. Right, so one other key thing I wanted to mention is that when it comes down to it, there's also power in solitude. Yes, loneliness is tough, but solitude is different. Solitude can be empowering if you learn to embrace it. Think of your favorite athletes who have spent thousands of hours of training on their own, pushing themselves when no one is watching. They're not doing it for the applause, they're doing it for the love of the game and their dedication to mastery. Learning to find comfort in those quiet moments when it's just you and your goals, that's when you can discover a strength that most people don't have. So instead of letting loneliness bring you down, see it as part of the process that makes you strong. You're building mental toughness, resilience, and self-reliance that others may never experience. Those 5 a.m. sessions in the gym, they're not just about the physical gains you're making, they're building an inner strength that will carry you through the hardest days in life. There is a difference between being alone and being lonely. And to reach the top, you do need to spend a heck of a lot of time alone, working on your individual craft. But that doesn't automatically make you lonely, especially if you apply the things that we spoke about a moment ago. So if you're an athlete feeling lonely right now, just know this, you're not alone in feeling alone. So many athletes before you have faced this, and many of the greats will say that it was these lonely moments that they found out what they were truly made of. Yes, there will be sacrifices, and yes, sometimes the loneliness will feel overwhelming, but this journey, as hard as it is giving you something rare. It's giving you resilience, focus, and a deeper sense of purpose that not everyone gets to experience in life. So keep that in mind and keep at it.